Hello everybody, it's HiroTheJapaneseTrain here.
And Master of the Lemons. And today we've got a very special character. Now, we were trying to figure out who a good Christmas character would be. Who's really a Christmas character? We don't have many. So we finally settled on Terence because he's often associated with snow. I mean, we constantly see him with that snow plow and kind of clearing away snow. There's a few episodes where it's very prevalent. And his introductory episode is all about snow. So because of that, I think that he's a pretty winter-related character, even though he's in a lot of other contexts.
I think he qualifies for the fact alone that he is wearing a Santa hat in Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree.
Yeah, no, that's true. He's the only one who wore a Santa hat in Thomas.
What if he
no
was?
Other characters.
That would be a tremendous episode if he was the only one with the Santa hat on.
But basically, I think Terence will be really interesting to talk about because we don't see an awful lot of him. Like, he's one of those characters that is really, I think everybody who's from season 1 is really deeply embedded in just kind of our idea of Thomas, and everybody in season 1 is treasured by everyone, I think. But Terence is one of those characters who they've never really done that much with. Like, he appears a lot, but there doesn't seem to be all that much to him. It's just, He's always there when they need, like, a road vehicle who can do odd jobs and tow stuff and, like, plow stuff out of the way. So that's really all that he's been used for. And I think it'd be interesting to kind of pull more out of him than that.
And most importantly, it's like he has appeared in so many episodes of the classic series, but we hardly ever hear him. He's hardly ever saying anything. Like, I was struggling with this, honestly, because I was thinking of all the episodes he's been in, and the only ones where he's had major roles are Thomas, Terence in the Snow, Thomas's Christmas Party, where he barely spoke, Henry's Forest, and then a couple of the road ones.
The thing is, I think that part of the reason for that is that Terence is a really simple character, I think. And I don't think that that's a flaw, and I would say that you could pull more depth out of Terence if you wanted to, but honestly, I think that one of his big strengths is that he's simple. Like, I see Terence as kind of this humble kind of farm boy with, like, a really simple perspective on the world. Like, he just, he has the few things that are important. He has his field, he has his plow, he's got a nice home, he's got a good job, and he's got his friends, and that's really all that matters, right? And the reason we always see him smiling, the reason that we never see Terence really stir anything up or really be the center of a big story is because Terence is never involved in any big conflict, because he's just great to get along with. He's
super reliable too. Just mechanically, we've never seen him break down.
Yeah,
until
he's never once had
really
a flaw.
Until the arguably out of character moment where he falls into a lake.
I don't care for that at all.
I don't either.
The whole point was that Terence was the reasonable one, and Thomas was the irrational one, and he should have listened to Terence. And now all of a sudden it turns out, it looks like Terence was a hypocrite all these years.
I think Terence Breaks the Ice is kind of a good leaping off point because I think you would agree with this, Lemmy, that you and I would say that is an example of exactly the opposite of Terence's character. Because
I think that if I were to list out all of Terence's most important kind of character attributes, it would be that he's very reliable, very dependable. It would be that he's extremely humble and very, very forward and friendly. And he's practical, right? He's wise.
He's very risk averse too. He's not. You don't see Terence get up to any heroism too. Like, that's interesting. Like, he clears snow for people. I guess you could argue that that's like a simple degree of heroism, but it's not like I don't know.
He doesn't risk life and limb.
No,
and we see a lot of other characters do. So, up until now, I was thinking that Terence is just like, that he wouldn't really have any flaws. He's really just kind all around, and maybe it's just his only flaw is that he can't deal with conflict very well, which I could still see. However, it would be interesting if Terence has kind of the philosophy of, like, mind your own business, right?
We've never seen Terence deal with something he can't handle, and it's not because of... It's because of the tasks that have been put in front of him. It's mostly just, hey, Terence, clear that snow. Hey, Terence, pull Birdie out of the mud.
Terence never intervenes in anything that, like, he he would actually struggle with, does he? He just does his simple work, does what's asked of him, but he doesn't take any big risks. You know, I think you're right. He's very risk averse. You know, it's interesting. I think a big place this is reflected is his relationship with Thomas. Because think about who Thomas is, right? Thomas is constantly going up and down that branch line complaining. Almost every time we see him on that branch, he's complaining about something. He's got some beef with somebody. He's angry about something. And even the first time he meets Terence, right? He's just a total jerk. He's got this serious prejudice towards him where he's just like, oh, you're hideous, look at you.
I like to think that all the Farquhar engines, like, just air their dirty laundry to Terence, and he doesn't tell any of them, but he could really do damage if he let it all out.
That's how I see Terence, is that I think Terence, you could call it two-faced in a way, when really he just wants to do damage control. He's never going to stand up to you.
He would be two-faced. He would be two-faced if he were using it for bad.
Yeah, but he just sits there. Like he's talking to Thomas, right? And he just lets Thomas talk. Thomas vents. He airs his grievances. He's like, oh, I can't believe that Daisy would do that. Can you imagine if I were to do the same thing? The passengers would be furious, and yet she gets away with it. And Terence is just like, well, I could see that. Oh. And but he doesn't really add anything. He doesn't fuel the fire, but he doesn't quench it either.
He reminds me of a bookworm.
I think Terence is fairly introverted, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think Terence is, the big thing about him is he does not like conflict. He wants to avoid it at all costs. He just wants to keep on, he wants to keep on smiling and just be on good terms with everybody,
This
right?
is a good way to describe it, is Terence, all the conflicts and all the jobs, I guess, Terence has had to do, or all the things he's had to put right, have always happened after something has happened. They're always after the fact. They're always reactive. So,
yeah,
like Terence is clearing snow.
It's always damage control.
Yeah, but the caveat is that damage has been done for him to do that. So,
yeah,
when, the heat is hot, he's never there. He's never involved.
That's true, yeah. It's like, he saw early on, because Terence is wise and he's knowledgeable about, he's got great street smarts. He saw early on that Thomas was heading for trouble. He must have, right?
Right.
But he didn't say anything, because that would mean getting into it with Thomas. And maybe that would prevent him from getting stuck in a snowdrift.
And also, Thomas was just totally rude to him about his caterpillar track.
But I don't think that's part of it. I don't think Terence holds any grudges. I think, here's how I see Terence, is I think that he's just extremely humble, down-to-earth, and wise, and has just realized, I wouldn't say he's necessarily very intelligent. I would say he's got wisdom. There's a difference between that and being really, really smart. I think that Terence knows more about life than a lot of other characters do. He's realized what is truly important.
Well, he has a lot of benefits that other road characters don't, because he is extremely well traveled around the island compared to any of the other road characters.
That's true, yeah. So maybe that's where his wisdom comes from.
Right, well, it's like we see him in the mountains, we see him on the Skarloey Railway, we see him, on the Northwestern, on the Farquhar branch.
Honestly, up until now, I was thinking that Terence, he specifically works in that field nearby Thomas's branch, and any time he's elsewhere is an anomaly. But maybe what it is, maybe he's not owned by the farmer who maintains that farm. Maybe he's owned by, like, a contractor that just rents him out to, like, any place on Sodor. And so he's all over the place because he's people rent him. He's not actually owned by any specific farmer.
Well, ownership is an interesting question because, like, I have here on the trivia section of the wiki, so I guess take it with a grain of salt, but I trust this. In the 1995 annual Jeeves Gets Cracking story, Terence's driver is revealed to be named Farmer Finney. However, he has been driven by Jem Cole, Farmer McCole, and Farmer Cullett once before. In a deleted scene of Ghost Train, Terence is driven by Sam the Farmer. And also, like, I could trust that he is owned by Farmer Finney because, a farmer can own a tractor and then, like, rent it all over the island.
That's true. So maybe Terrence's home base is next to Thomas's branch, and that's where he spends maybe half the year. But then there's little periods throughout where he's rented out to different places, which does give him a huge range across the island. Yeah. But at the same time, it kind of... that's really interesting, is that Terence... I almost wonder if he's
kind of a cosmopolitan.
Yeah. Honestly, I almost wonder if Terence is kind of like a messenger between places on the island.
I totally see that. And
yeah.
Or it could be, Terence himself is sort of like... I don't want to say door-to-door salesman, but that's kind of the vibe I get, where he's not really tied down to any one farm. Because he's also plowing a farm in Faulty Whistles. He's just seen on construction sites and stuff like that. 4 little engines. He's there by a little farm.
There is an alternative, Matt.
What's the alternative? That these are all different tractors?
Yeah, that they're not all Terence. We just think they are.
I do not like that.
I don't like it either, that there's a bunch of identical-looking Terrences all around the island.
That they could, play tricks on the other engines.
Yeah. Deceive them. No, I like much better the idea that, Terence is, this kind of seasoned kind of traveler amongst the whole island, and that's where he's gotten his wisdom from, and he's seen all walks of life on this island, and he realizes that all the petty squabbles the engines get into... they don't amount to anything. All engines care about the same things, make the same mistakes, suffer from the same, kind of short-sightedness.
And at the end of the day, he's the one that's, going around just sort of quietly and chipperly, clearing the line for them sometimes, rescuing them from scrapes without a single complaint.
I really like, the more I think about it, I wonder if there's situations... because Terence is always in the background, right? He's such a wallflower. I wonder if there are situations that he's averted that he hasn't even told anyone about. He's just been able to, drag a log off the track just in time and, save Thomas's life and just never said anything about it. I bet there have been times like that.
Probably. I mean, more times than not, I can imagine. Maybe there's this time that the main line... the express is, heading for trouble, and Terence has cleared it before anyone could even report it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's I've kind of had the, because earlier you said that maybe it's just that Terence, the reason we don't have any heroic Terence moments is because he kind of, he doesn't take those risks. But maybe the reason is because he's so humble that he's never talked about them.
And no one even sees it, including, it's a secret that if you went to Sodor and filmed Terence and interviewed him, he wouldn't even talk about, and you probably wouldn't even know.
I think it's so fitting for Terence that... because I think Terence... I think he has good self-esteem, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think he may have the smallest ego on the whole island. Or at least a very, very, very small ego.
Yeah.
Because Terence, I think, if somebody asked him, hey, Terence, did you get that log off the track and save the express? He would say, yes, I did that a few years ago. But, and everyone would be like, what? You didn't tell us that. And he's like, oh, well, I didn't think it was that important. He's never going to say it himself. But if you ask him, he's going to be like, well, I was always taught to be honest, so I'm going to be honest. And, he'll explain in detail.
The biggest single conflict we've ever seen Terence in is when Thomas says, what ugly wheels you've got, and then he just says what kind of traction he is.
Yeah. He doesn't even...
oh, these are caterpillars.
Yeah, he just gives his answer. He doesn't
even get mad.
Yeah, I know. And I don't think that's him showing restraint either. I think that Terence is just... he's so at peace with who he is in his life, and he's so content that he is not offended by what Thomas has to say. Nobody can hurt Terence with sticks and stones, because he's at a place in his life where he's happy, he's content, he's got it figured out, and so he's solid, he's a rock. And but at the same time, I don't think that Terence is immune from any sort of conflict. I think that there are things that can upset him. I think that if you were put in a situation, so like what we said earlier, right, about Terence, he's kind of, Thomas can vent to him, Daisy can vent to him, whoever can vent to him. Well, I imagine a scenario where Terence was at Farquhar Yard for some reason, and Daisy and Thomas were fighting, and then Thomas says, "Hey, Terence, come over here, back me up." And then Daisy's like, "No, you back me up, Terence." And he's his eyes are darting between the two of them. And Thomas is like, "Come on, Terence, come on, Terence."
Just slowly backs away.
Yeah, like he would be so overwhelmed. I'd feel so bad for him. He'd be so upset because he doesn't want to make any enemies. He just wants to support everybody, but like he can't always do that, right? And so he would just be debilitated in a situation like that because he does not know how to go up against somebody.
He'd like fake being asleep or something.
Yeah, like he can't take sides like that. He hates conflict.
Honestly, maybe he lacks sort of conflict management. Like if we're talking social skills. Because I do see a part of Terence that is a little, not socially impaired, but a little asocial.
Yeah, I think he's, like we said earlier, I think he's introverted, right? That's his personality, is that he kind of, I mean, I don't know though, because he is happy to approach engines, but I don't know about that. I think if Terence is approached and somebody asks him a question or says hello to him, he's happy to respond, but he will keep to himself most of the time unless he has a reason not to.
Right.
And so, like, I think that, a lot of the time when Thomas is like, got something on his mind and he stops at that signal and talks to Terence, I think Terence is just minding his own business. And Thomas doesn't even look over to Terence to see if he's paying attention. Thomas just starts rambling, just like, I cannot believe the way that this railway is run. And then Terence is just like, his eyes dart over and he's like, huh? And then he kind of goes over. And then he starts listening, right? But like, Thomas just starts talking and then Terence gravitates towards him. But if Thomas stopped at that signal and didn't say anything, Terence might say hello, but I think he'd be equally content just, keeping on doing what he was doing. I think, there's a great line in Thomas, Terence and the Snow. I don't know if it's in the TV series, but I know it's in the Railway series, where, it says that Thomas would whistle to Terence as he went by, but Terence wouldn't respond. And you could take that as maybe Terence is mad at Thomas because of, making fun of his treads. But I think what it is just that Terence... Like, he doesn't
Terence
realize...
isn't going to respond just because he's just busy at work and with what's in front of him.
Yeah, he's just kind of focused. And it's like, if Thomas was like, hey, Terence, hey! Then Terence would be like, oh, hello, Thomas. I don't want to say he's not all there, but I think Terence is like, he's just... He's very relaxed. He's not going to, like... he doesn't see it as, like, a social must.
He's there to be approached, not to approach.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, that's kind of him. He's there, a fly on the wall, if anybody wants to talk to him or ask him a question. But, he's not necessarily going to jump into a conversation. His default, I think, is just doing the work that he loves and just listening in and, having a good day.
And that's why we've never seen him have a frowny face in the TV series.
That honestly inspires it, though, because the thing is...
In the model series, at least, in the CGI series.
The reason that we never see Terence frown, I think he would, like, have different expressions. He'd have, like, a neutral face sometimes. He wouldn't always be grinning so wide.
It's not like he's never sad.
Yeah. However, I think most of the time, if you saw Terence, he would be making that face. I think most of the time, he would be happy because, like we've said, he's content with his life. He's actually... He has almost no stress. Everything is like water off a duck's back to him.
He's like a roadway
and the only time I think when he actually is under a lot of stress is when other characters have put him in that situation and he doesn't know how to deal with it. Yeah. Like the Thomas and Daisy example earlier. Or if he were forced to, if he had to do a serious rescue operation. I feel like Terence would be able to handle that situation because he's been in a lot of situations, he's lived a lot, he has a lot of wisdom. But at the same time, I feel like he wouldn't like being in a tense situation like that. No. It would be interesting to see a situation where Harold and Terence are, in the same rescue mission. Harold would just be gung-ho. Harold would just be like, all right, here we go. We can do this, everyone. And then Terence would just be like...
kind of freaking out.
Yeah, he'd just be like, all right, what must I do? I suppose I... And he would have the knowledge necessary to actually...
I can imagine, it's a Sodor Search and Rescue Center. They're all, jumping off to the job, and then Terence is just slowly puttering behind them. Just I think of just a film shot. All the engines leave the frame, and then Terence just comes from behind. Is like, put, 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 put.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, and I don't think it would be, totally obvious that Terence is, so stressed, but I think you could kind of see it, right? He would still, if you said something to him, he would still smile and have, you could see warmth behind his eyes. Yeah. But at the same time, you could see there's something on his mind. He's stressed about this situation. He does not like being in a rescue operation. He does not like being in the middle between two friends fighting. I don't think he likes fighting in general. I think even if he's not a part of it, or he doesn't feel guilty about any of it, I think if he was nearby Tidmouth Yard or something, right, and Gordon and Henry and James are in some big argument, right, I think Terence would kind of like what you said earlier is very apt. I think he would slowly back away. He would kind of try to get out of that situation. He doesn't like the tension. He doesn't like fighting. He just wants everybody to kind of calm down. But he's kind of too afraid to jump in there and stop the fight. So he's just kind of he's just kind of bearing it. He's like, I'm sure they'll be done with it in a few minutes. And, because Terence is just a happy guy. He doesn't bring drama into his life. Others do.
His strength is kind of, His strength is kind of when there is conflict, he not necessarily internalizes it, but when there's conflict, he just puts it into himself and then just lets it dissipate. He's a sponge.
Yeah, no, he is a sponge. Yeah. And it's like...
he's orange. Square.
I'm sorry. How dare you? Sponges are yellow.
I mean, not all of them. God. You got a green one by the sink.
Oh my God. You know what's interesting? The thing is, I think that Terence would treat everybody with compassion. Even the worst character. Even Diesel 10.
Yeah, I was just about to say Diesel 10.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Diesel 10 trying to attack Terence and he's just puttering away from him? Perpendicular to the tracks.
Oh my God. Diesel 10's like, damn it, he figured it out! They never know to go that way! He must be some kind of genius!
This is a kind of this is a point that no one really has ever talked about, but I think because would you agree that, in Thomas, Terence in the Snow, Terence is pulling a plow? Would you personify that plow?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. So
I would say...
So then I think of, Terence's relationship with that plow, and then Terence's relationship with all the carts that he's ever pulled.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Because Terence, it's interesting. In the same way that Oliver pulls along Toad, right? Even though Toad's just a piece of rolling stock, he doesn't have his own engine. It's like, I think Terence, as a road vehicle, has his things that he pulls. He's got his plows, he's got carts and stuff that he pulls. And if trucks are alive, I bet carts would be alive too. And a plow is a lot like, it's just a piece of machinery that I think it's big enough that it deserves to kind of have a face and be personified.
Yeah, our metric is kind of bigger than a lawnmower.
Yeah, that's kind of anything bigger than a lawnmower, I think, is gets a face. It's a very flimsy system.
Because Oliver and Toad, there's a really clearly defined strong character there. The plow, I don't think would have really a strong character. There's just sort of agreeable kind of.
Yeah. Honestly, though, that's kind of Terence too. It's I feel I kind of have this general idea farm life, at least on Terence's farm, is simpler. And so his worldview is also a little bit simpler, but not in a bad way. In stripping away all the stuff that city folk worry about, but really don't need to. Right? Gordon is all obsessed with his express and running to time.
Prestige
and blah, blah, blah.
and the mainland and London.
And dignity and, all that. And Thomas is focused on his branch line and he's, if he gets slighted by Daisy or if Daisy takes his passengers or something, he'll be furious and, and that stuff. And even Bertie, I think, Bertie is very competitive, gets in competitions with Thomas. And to an extent, he's constantly trying to prove the value of the roads. And he kind of has this road elitist mentality. And I feel like if Terence were talking to Bertie would talk about Thomas is all well and good, but we both know that the roads are the best. Am I right? And Terence would just and Terence would be uncomfortable with that. He'd be like, well, that's certainly one way to look at it, Bertie. And Bertie would be like, well, what do you mean one way to look at it? I would think you agree. Oh no, I definitely lovely weather we're having, isn't it? And it just he would try to kind of not.
Terence and Trevor share kind of a similar liberation because they're not linked to road or rail. Terence, I think, kind of... It's symbolic that Terence can just as easily go on tracks, over them with his treads.
Yeah.
As on the roads, as on a hill, as in a bog,
Yeah, and like Trevor is literally a steam engine, but with road wheels.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I feel like Terence and Trevor, like if they were having like a road vehicles night out, right, with Terence, Trevor, and Birdie.
Oh my God, they would like drive through a field, and Birdie's like, Birdie would be.
Birdie's like, no, I can't go this way, I'm afraid. It'll ruin my tires. They're paper thin. Or Trevor is just like, oh, don't be a spoil sport. Come on. And so Terence and Trevor just, go right through the field like it's nothing. And Birdie's such a city boy. He's like, no. But he goes through anyway because he wants to be cool. And so he goes with them. And he's being careful. And he's turning. And he's like going in an S kind of pattern where he's like, oh, no. Ugh. Oh, I think I ran over some, what is that? Well, it appears to be cow dung. No! Like,
and
Birdie would just be...
And then he gets stuck and Terence has to pull his sorry behind out of there. Edward Trevor and the Really Useful Party.
Terence and Trevor would just laugh at Birdie, and then Birdie would just be like, traumatized, like, I am never going in a field again.
And Birdie complains about every pothole on the road.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Birdie is such he can't even handle anything less than a nicely paved road. Honestly, him and Thomas are made for each other. They're just complainers.
We have to do an episode on Birdie.
I know. Birdie's such a great character.
But, everything that we said about Birdie, the opposite is true about Terence, because he's just focused on what's directly in front of him, and if that's snow, if that's road, if that's grass, if that's mud, it doesn't even faze him.
Yeah, he's not squeamish at all, and he's just like he just, as long as he's checking for two things: is this going to get me hurt, and is this going to hurt anybody else's feelings? No, all right, fine, it's good, and he'll just go on past. Right? He'd be fine with running right over a pile of cow dung. It does not faze him. But Birdie is spotless. He's polished. His red is gleaming. He wants to go back to his nice clean bus shed and get a wash and get all the special sprays to like wax him.
Stay bright red.
Yeah, exactly. It would be interesting because I think he would be really close friends with Terence and Trevor. But at the same time, like, their lifestyle is so different from his. I honestly think Trevor would be more not reckless, but I think Trevor would be more willing to kind of live life than Terence is, because Terence, I think, is just, he does not take risks. I think maybe there was a time when Trevor was more cautious and played things more by the books, but now, like, I just look at Terence and Trevor, right? I want to compare Thomas and Trevor to like Terence and Thomas, Terence in the Snow or whatever, right? So so notice how Trevor approaches the prospect of revitalizing the harbor on Thomas's branch line. He approaches it as like a challenge. Trevor is like, I'll show them what a traction engine can really do. But Terence doesn't ever have that ego to him. Not that Trevor has a big ego. Yeah. I think that Trevor is very...
Well, Terence has never had a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. But Trevor was almost scrapped, right? So now he's going to prove to everybody, well, that was a mistake, and let me show you why. And, whereas Terence doesn't have that, right? And I feel like because of that, also after being saved from scrap, Trevor would want to live life more because he almost lost it. And so it's interesting. He's kind of like the guy in his 70s that is really, he's realizing that maybe, he's getting closer and closer to the end of his life. And so he wants to actually live. He wants to actually experience life. And when he realizes that, he actually does things like go out on a midnight ride with Birdie and Terence to go and actually drive through the field. And sure, maybe Birdie's not going to like it that much, but you know what? Back in my day, we would drive through a field like that. Buses couldn't always run on nicely paved roads. Sometimes they had to take a detour. And then Birdie's just like, But we are not in the past. Do you understand that, Trevor? Oh. And he wouldn't, he just would hate the whole situation.
Right.
And it's like, I feel like Trevor is very kind and respectful and everything, but I feel like he could surprise you on how adventurous he might be.
It's funny because in contrast to, like, I don't know why, I've always seen Willie's tractor as kind of a jerk.
He does look like kind of a jerk.
He looks angry.
Yeah, he looks like...
The two of Willie's tractor seems kind of a little reckless. Maybe rightfully so, because he's sort of, like, irritated with Willie the farmer, who's, like, really incompetent. Terence even never has to deal with that level of, like...
But if Terence did have a really incompetent driver... If his driver made like 100 mistakes in a row, the same mistake over and over, plowed the field wrong, and did something really stupid, Terence would not get even a little bit more frustrated the 100th time. He would just have he would have the patience of a saint. He would just be like, it's all right, we'll try again. Yeah, and he's like and he just smiles at him and they try it again, right? Terence just does not, because he's content, right? He's in no hurry, he's where he needs to be.
Right.
He doesn't have anything he's aspiring to. He's got everything already. So he's good.
Yeah. And I like how little Terence is. There's this one illustration from Thomas's Christmas Party, the pop-up book, where Terence has a cab. I'm just gonna say, just straight up, no cab. But I like that Terence is sort of just, it's impractical. He'd rather just bear the elements.
Yeah, it would be so nice to watch Terence working in the rain, because he'd still be smiling, he'd still be enjoying himself, whistling. It would not faze him, because he knows he'll be well maintained.
And the snow too, all the times that giant snowplow. Thomas is so privileged compared to Terence when it comes to snow. Terence wears this giant snowplow, and Thomas wears it once.
Yeah, Thomas doesn't even want his snowplow. He's just like, ugh, I don't want to wear it. And then Terence, meanwhile, has this just huge thing he has to push around. I mean,
he's in the thick of the snow every single time. He doesn't have tracks that are probably plowed beforehand anyway.
And this I think is a great kind of last topic to focus on for Terence, is the reason we chose him.
Yeah.
I think that the snow thing is a big part of his personality and his character, because I just think Terence is this. I'd like to liken him to Donald and Douglas, honestly, because they also clear the snow, and I think that.
If Terence were faster, he would do it for the whole island.
Yeah.
That's the only thing stopping him.
Exactly. I think that Terence is just so, I would say dedicated, which he is, but I feel like that's honestly misleading, because I don't think it's really a burden for him at all. I like to think that other tractors, I just think of other tractors throughout the island that probably have their own plows, or even those pickup trucks that have plows on them. Every year they all complain about it, or something goes wrong with all of them, or whatnot. And Terence is just so reliable, doesn't make a fuss. Other tractors would pop a gasket. Wouldn't it be awesome? Imagine if there was a story where Thomas had a really special train to take up the branch, and there were no other engines available on the branch for whatever reason, right? And so Thomas was expected the next morning, but the snow had fallen so heavily that the whole branch was covered and Thomas could not get through. And they were expecting to have to cancel it. And then Thomas sets wheel on that branch line, and the whole thing is clear. And then he goes all the way to the end, and he's just shocked. He's like, how is all the snow gone? It was here last night. And then
the Fat Controller let Donald and Douglas down here.
Yeah, and so then Thomas goes to the end of the branch, and then he gets flagged down, and he turns a corner, and Terence is there, almost at Farquhar, plowing the whole thing. He's gone all night to clear this line for him. Thomas is just so, touched. It's rare for him to kind of be that, to feel that much gratitude. But he's just like, oh my God, Terence, you did this for me.
Yeah, and there are so many Christmas opportunities with Terence that haven't been utilized.
Yeah. I would really like to see, I feel like there are certain nights at Farquhar Sheds where Terence is, parked nearby and can kind of talk to everybody during the night. I would like to see a Christmas Eve or something where they were talking like that. Maybe Terence is in the yard clearing the snow from just the yard in general, right? Like, he's
I
like...
bet you he would be.
Yeah. So it's like, something like that would be really cool.
He's kind of like that janitor that never makes a fuss, always has his headphones on.
Yeah, exactly. He's... And again, I think that makes him a lot like Donald and Douglas. I think Donald and Douglas and Terence would have an intense admiration for each other. I mean, they just...
They would.
Because they're both very, very dedicated workers. They both never make a fuss. They never complain, and they know what's really important in life. And so, because of that, I mean, I think they would get along great. And they could, like, share, like, snow-clearing tactics. Like, the best way to do this, I think, is you probably put the plow on this way. And then you go only 30 miles per hour. You don't go any faster than that. And Terence is like, oh, now that is a good tactic. I never thought about it that way. Personally, I would go 10 miles per hour. Yeah, it's pretty much all I can do.
Because I can't go 30.
Yeah, it's like, I could just so see them having snow talk.
Yeah.
And then, like, Gordon is just, like, at the other side of the yard, just like, oh my god, I'm trying to sleep! And they're just talking.
And then Gordon came by with his machine. Would you guys like to have snow talk?
Oh my god. But
Get out of here, Gordon.
But I could see Donald, Douglas, and Terence's snow conversations being this, where, like, everybody else is just like, what are they even talking about? But they would get it, right? And in general, even not around Christmas time, I think Donald, Douglas, and Terence would have great talks. They're both hard workers. They both know how to manage a heavy workload and actually kind of...
Terence could write a great self-help book.
Yeah, honestly, Terence would do a fantastic job writing a self-help book. He could...
Living like Terence. Get that trending. Hashtag living like Terence.
Yes, hashtag living like Terence.
Go out and plow the fields.
But yeah.
You got snow to clear up.
But overall, I adore Terence as a character. And I just, I think that his interactions with other road vehicles, his interactions with Thomas and the branch line engines, and his interactions with really everybody around the whole island, because, he goes all over the place.
What's so great about Terence is that he's so reliable, but he's also never really, punctual. He kind of has like an intuitive sixth sense where he just kind of is there at the right place at the right time. Yeah,
that's really interesting. It's like, Terence always shows up right where you need him. Like, he's almost like a guardian angel around this island, where it's like...
You know what's so weird is this is like the weirdest connection I've ever felt. But it's... For those who have seen It's a Wonderful Life, Clarence the Guardian Angel always reminded me of Terence. Not just because of the name.
I totally see Terence as like a guardian angel type, because he's always in the background. He's always kind of, he's never really too controversial. He's always kind of on everybody's side, and he's just like, he seems to be able to go anywhere he wants on Sodor.
And he changed lives, like a Henry's Forest. That meant a lot to Henry, and Terence, I'm sure the weight of that was not lost on him.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, the most excited we see Terence is when he is comforting Henry.
Honestly. I mean, he will always be kind to everybody. He's never hurt, he could never hurt a fly. He would never be mean to a soul.
He's the perfect person that comes across somebody who's gone extremely down on their luck and, like, brings them a coffee or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a sweet thought. Yeah.
It's just he does the little things that make life worth living for other people. That's just his nature. He's so unsung, and he's so, there's no need for him to, even take credit for it, and even be recognized by it. And for 99% of the thoughts that we have as Thomas fans are not about Terence.
Yeah, and he doesn't mind that, because, he just wants to be good to everybody and live his peaceful life on his farm, the way that he wants to live it. And, that's really all that matters to him. And really, I think that's what makes him probably one of the happiest characters on Sodor, because he's got it all figured out, He's got a peaceful life.
This felt so feel-good to
do.
This felt like such a feel-good episode to record.
I know.
And that's why it's Christmassy.
Yeah, because Terence is just so wholesome, He's just he's wholesome is the word I would use to describe him.
Yeah. I would too.
But yeah, so I mean, I think we've said our piece on Terence. I really love all the stuff that we kind of considered and came up with, and I'd love to hear the viewer's perspective on Terence too, because I think there's a lot of ways that you could kind of that you could interpret him. And personally, I love this interpretation, but there's a lot of different ways that you could do it. So, what do you think about him?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for watching, everybody. I mean, this has been Character Gallery.
Appreciate it.
I've been Lemmy.
I'm Matt.
And thank you for watching. See you, everyone.
Take care.